October 2024. Following the release of the new player's handbook, Optimizer legend Treantmonk releases a video series evaluating the expected single target damage of several classes. And in its Ranger videos, he figures it sucks now. The Ranger is distraught at first. Anger and depression follow suit. He seeks solace in a bottle, but that's only a gateway for stronger stuff. He gets money from a loan shark to get his fix, but when he doesn't pay back, his goons come to look for him. He's trapped and hunted down until, cornered like an animal, he attempts to fight back. Except, his DPR is too small to resist. It's in a dirty alleyway that the Ranger takes his last breath, eyes still full of questions. How did he get there? What did he do wrong? Why didn't he multiclass like his mother told him to do? The Ranger won't ever get his answers, but you will. Because Treantmonk calculation about the Ranger's DPR, they were wrong.
Ciao a tutti e benvenuti. My name is Nick, the Savage Attacker, and this is a video about Dungeons & Dragons math. So, that opening was exaggerated just a little bit. However, I do think Treantmonk rushed his judgment, and was expecting a second look at the Ranger. Since that never happened, I decided I could do something about it myself. The Ranger isn't perfect. Its class identity is all over the place, but it's not as weak at single target damage as that video suggested. I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, this isn't meant to disrespect Treantmonk's work. I got months to run math and theorize, not to mention 2 whole new books that gives the class more context. If anything, without Treantmonk's work, I would have never been able to make my own analysis. This being said, his math showed that the class doesn't keep up with the improvement of the rest in regard to single target damage per round, a statement that somehow part of the community morphed into Ranger sucks, full stop, and that's not fair. And today I'm here to set the record straight. This video is meant to kick off a series that re-evaluates the Ranger using hindsight Treantmonk luck at the time. Then I hope I can move on to other things. In case you don't remember Treantmonk's videos, or haven't seen them yet, let me give you some context. That video was part of a series in which he gave a look to the option that the new player's handbook offered for several classes. He first considered how much damage would deal a character without subclass features that took 20 level in a given class, then proceeded to add some optimization by using the best subclass to improve DPR, sometimes adding some multiclassing or picking counterintuitive feats. For the Ranger, however, he wanted to look at iconic weapons. I'll take a look at the Longbow in the next video. For now, I'm going to focus on the first video, a character wielding a short sword in one hand and a scimitar in the other, as dual wielding has been made iconic for the class by a character like Drizzt. The build was intentionally simple. It didn't assume any species or background, 17 dexterity, 16 wisdom, and a decent constitution to boot. It's important to understand the assumption behind the tactics he used. On round 1, the character will cast Hunter's Mark on target 1, then attack it with as many short sword and scimitar attack it could. In round 2, with Hunter's Mark still active on target 1, the Ranger attacked again. In round 3, he assumes target 1 was knocked out, so it had to move on to target 2 and cast Hunter's Mark again and repeat the whole thing. This meant the bonus action was taken for 2 out of 4 rounds by Hunter's Mark. Just in the prior video, he also had a build with the same weapons and Hunter's Mark, a Vengeance Paladin, so he could see how the spell made the bonus action more busy and didn't synergize with the dual wielder feat. So he dropped that in favor of Defensive Duelist. This ranger will get that at level 4, bring dexterity to 20 at level 8, then improve its wisdom, which barely mattered, especially since he considered that Nature's Veil will activate proficiency bonus time per day, not a number equal to your wisdom modifier. Finally, he took Irresistible Offense, as it gave a way to bypass immunities to piercing and slashing damage, alongside the damage bump. Running the math myself with minor corrections, I can confirm this build does flatline after level 8, only improving with really high level features. But how bad is this really? We need a metric to answer the question. Before the 2024 update, we would have used a warlock that always casts Hex and Agonizing Eldritch Blast as a comparison, but part of what Treantmonk and the community figured is that damage is just too low to compare against now. Instead, he's currently using a Pact of the Blade build, but it's a little too messy for my tastes, so I'm going with an alternative. YouTuber D_Twig did an excellent analysis of the data Treantmonk collected in the very same video series, and found a simple build close to the average of the over 40 builds he analyzed. Fighter 1 for heavy crossbow and archery, and Rogue 19, no subclass feature assumed. It casts True Strike every round, and it's supposed to get advantage from steady aim when that's available. And finishes with combat prowess at level 20. I'm keeping this as brief as I can, go watch the video, it's amazing. And if you're not subscribed to D_Twig's channel, please fix that, it's definitely worth your time. I'm going to refer to this as a twig line. Unlike what Eldritch Blast was, however, this is already good damage. If you're familiar with it, it's closer to what a crossbow fighter baseline was. The goal of a damage dealing build should be to stay around this, and only the best damage dealers stay constantly above it. So, that gives us a solid visual comparison, but I think I liked from Treantmonk series a lot was his own ranking system. When he was done with the builds, he released a few videos to evaluate how the classes compared against each other. First, he averaged the DPR per level of each build per tier, meaning from level 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 16, and 17 to 20. Then, he multiplied the results by how much time is usually spent in a campaign at those tiers. By 1 for tier 1, 3 for tier 2, 2 for tier 3, and 1 again for tier 4. Finally, he's just summed together the results. This is an incredible snapshot of how good the DPR line is, and it's just 5 numbers. The twig line, for instance, scores 10, 25, 40, 54 for 220 total, while a 2-weapon fighting ranger using only Hunter's Mark manages just 14, 25, 28, 37 for 183. You can tell just by hearing that its damage dropped too much in tier 3 and above. So, Treantmonk considered that the issue might have been concentrating on just Hunter's Mark, that is just a first level spell at the end of the day. He ran the numbers for a different one, Summon Fae. This build will be assumed to cast the spell before combat and to have it active thereafter, taking Warcaster at level 12 instead of improving Wisdom. This looked a little better. Since Summon Fae is the spell he looked at, when it came down to add a subclass to refine the build, like for instance by adding Warrior of the Shadow to a generic monk build, he considered Fae Wanderer. That subclass gets Fae Reinforcements at level 11, a feature that allows it to cast a modified version of Summon Fae that doesn't require concentration, but only lasts a minute. I get the reasoning, but does it even look like that's the damage option for the Ranger? To me, it feels more like the option that adds a modicum of control on top of utility features. In order to be played that way, this Ranger will need to sacrifice the attack action on round 1, losing one round of its biggest damage option. Not to mention, if you cast the fuming version of Summon Fae, which gets advantage after teleporting, you'd miss out on using Beguiling Twist with the Myrtle one, an amazing combo that deals a whopping 0 damage, and also competes with Defensive Duelist for reaction. I am not running the numbers, because the very assumption of precasting as much as you like and never losing concentration was later dropped in the series. Fae Wanderer was a mistake. So, let's make a worse one. Let's take Dual Wielder. See, Treantmonk dismissed Summon Fae at 3rd level and Summon Beast at 2nd, as their damage output was too close to Hunter's Mark, which is essentially 3. This meant he could at most benefit from 3 4th level and 2 5th level slots, and only at a very high level. The reason is simple. At level 11 in a build like this, Hunter's Mark deal 8.19 DPR. Summon Beast, assuming advantage, 8.3 DPR. Summon Fae, again with advantage, 11.2 DPR. These improvements are hardly worth the cost of the spell, but what if they dealt about 3 DPR more per round? That would be a valuable improvement from Hunter's Mark, and it's precisely what Dual Wielder brings to the table. If your bonus action is free, because you concentrate on a spell that doesn't use it, you can attack more and deal more damage. So I rebuilt a 2-weapon Ranger, but this time with Dual Wielder instead of Defensive Duelist. Now, keep in mind, a subclassless Ranger is just a thought experiment. Ranger are subclass heavy by design. They get major damage boosts at level 3 and 11, which change the entire dynamic of the character. I want to emphasize that this is purely an optimization exercise for a character that doesn't exist. Don't blindly take Dual Wielder on a Ranger. It's almost always a trap. With that in mind, let's get into the Dual Wielder Ranger. I mentioned Treantmonk abandoned the assumption you can reliably class a spell before combat, but we need to estimate how much that could happen. To remain fair and consistent, I'll set up strict parameters. Half of the time, on average, casting before combat will not be an option and will resort to Hunter's Mark. Once per day, say when crossing a generally hostile environment, we'll cast a long-lasting spell for insurance, specifically Summon Beast or Summon Fae. Once per day, when dungeon crawling, in enemy territory, or when we set an ambush, we'll use our big guns, Conjure Animals or Conjure Woodland Beings. They only last 10 minutes, but they are much more powerful than the summons, because unlike those, they can deal damage off turn as well. Of course, these are 3rd and 4th level respectively, so before we unlock them, we can just use Summon Beast in this scenario too. As for feats, we're going to take Dual Wielder at 4, Cap Dexterity at level 8, Improve Concentration with Warcaster at 12, Wisdom plus 4 and Constitution plus 3 at 16, and finish with Irresistible Offense. If we were to fit everything in one calculation, it will make for really messy math. So I'm running the math for 2 damage scenarios. 1. Hunter's Mark only. This represents fights where combat is unexpected, concentration is lost, or a summoned creature dies. And 2. Other spells. These assume pre-casting the best spell with our 2 highest slots, maintaining concentration, and that a summon isn't killed. At the end of the build, we'll look how much the second scenario can apply over the other, making assumption based on our concentration feats. Tier 1. At level 1 we attack twice. The first attack is flat, the second has advantage if the first one hits, but it doesn't have dexterity. To quote Treantmonk, if you're playing a level 1 one-shot, play a Ranger. DPR is 12.1, which is double the baseline almost. At level 2, due to 2-weapon fighting style, the short sword and the scimitar deal the same damage, and this will stay true for the rest of the build. So I just average out the chance they have to land a hit or to crit, considering how many times Vex applies. Nothing at level 3 because no subclass, then we get Dual Wielder and Dexterity 18 at level 4. Since both weapons are light, are being used as part of the attack action and lack the two-handed property, Dual Wielder can be used with either one, so Shortle would probably be the better option in order to use Vex more. However, the bonus action will always happen after the attack action on round 2, meaning right before we move on to a different target. So, no matter what weapon we're using, we don't benefit from Vex more while using Hunter's Mark. Nevertheless, with Dual Wielder at level 4, the average DPR is 15 instead of 14 from 2-weapon fighting and 10 from the baseline. In Tier 2, the split begins. Hunter's Mark benefits from extra attack, which this time means we do apply Vex one more time, and then Dexterity plus 5 at level 8. That's an average of 29 DPR in the tier, a lot more than the baseline. For other spells, we concentrate on Summon Beast first, assuming Pack Tactics grants it advantage. That plus 4 whole attacks per round make it 30.8, a lot more than the average of Hunter's Mark. Then, at level 9, with Summon Fae and Conjure Animals, we get to 38.6. I mentioned Conjure Animal deals damage twice per round. This is because you can position the center of the emanation so that the enemy is within 5 feet from it. At that point, if the enemy moves away, it enters a square within 10 feet from the emanation. If it doesn't move, it ends its turn within 10 feet, and both conditions force a new saving throw. While doing this, we also use Dual Wielder on round 1, meaning more attacks with the Vex property, which also raises accuracy a little. The average for the tier, while concentrating, is 34 DPR. Tier 3. Hunter's Mark has absolutely no improvement, it stays 31 DPR, this is when it gets really under baseline. Concentrating instead has all of the improvements. We start with a slot on Conjure Animals and one on Summon Fae, the Fuming option. At level 12 we get Warcaster, then we upcast Summon Fae starting from level 13, and if you're wondering, the calculation for this spell adds together the odds of landing an attack with and without advantage, and to crit with or without advantage. I'm just applying the associative property of multiplication. At level 14 we get Nature's Veil. This is a bonus action, so we have to forfeit a Dual Wielder attack to activate it, but it's well worth the trade. Assuming the enemy doesn't have true or blind sight, we not only get advantage to attack rolls, but we impose disadvantage to attack against us, which will help us maintain concentration. It works on the round you activate it and until the end of your next turn, so it's 2 rounds of advantage to attack rolls per use, which is a number equal to our Wisdom modifier. Before level 16 we only get 3 uses, but I'm still considering it's always active because, as you will see, I'm not going to assume we're getting more than 6 rounds a day at this level when we're able to concentrate on other spells. However, being invisible also means the enemy won't be able to make an opportunity attack against us. This allows us to position so, in order to come and attack us, the enemy has to enter the area of Conjure Woodland Beings that comes into play at level 15. So I'm assuming 2 saves per round for that spell as well. This is a conservative estimate. Not only the party might have force movement options and abuse our emanation more, which of course will be even better with clerics and druids that have higher level spells, but while this is supposed to be single target damage, it's actually not. Remember, we're attacking target 1, then on round 3 we're moving on to target 2, assuming the first one is dead. Damage dealt to the secondary target should count against total DPR, because, say, a Divine Smite on round 3 would. However, keep in mind the goal of a damage dealer is to take down threats as fast as possible, so while it counts for DPR, when optimizing it's better to make it so our damage is focused on round 1 or 2 at most. Finally, level 16 improves Wisdom. With non-Hunter's Mark spell, the average of Tier 3 is 45. Baseline is 40. Tier 4. Hunter's Mark finally has improvements in the form of Precise Hunter, Irresistible Offense, and Foe Slayer. Advantage brings the damage from 30.7 to 37.7. 21 bonus damage on a crit makes it 45.1, and having a D10 for Hunter's Mark makes it 51.7. Interestingly, this also means Hunter's Mark with Precise Hunter is like a 3rd level spell, like Treantmonk said in his first reaction to the player's Longbow Ranger. Also, with Foe Slayer is closer to a 4th level one. The average damage in Tier 4 for Hunter's Mark only is 43 DPR. For Concentration, this time we cast Woodland Being first, reaching 57.8, and then Summon Fae alongside Irresistible Offense, push it to 65.8, for 62 total, and baseline is 54. Now it's a matter of estimating how long we can realistically maintain concentration. I have no way to tell how much this will happen. I don't know how many times the Ranger will be attacked and how many of them will deal more than 20 damage and how much more than that. I'm going to make assumptions that are mostly guesswork. Before Warcaster at 12, we can maybe keep concentration once by chance. The second round is lost all the times. So it's 3 out of 16 rounds. It doesn't matter as much as Hunter's Mark damage is still pretty high. Warcaster grants us 2 whole rounds, 4 out of 16. Being invisible with Nature's Veil, 5 out of 16. As you can see, 3 uses at level 14 are enough. And improving Constitution while being invisible all the time brings it to 6 out of 16. This gives us a weighted average for damage output, allowing us to compare against Treantmonk Ranger and the baseline. The final score: 15, 30, 35, 50, ranking 2026. It's a little under baseline from 11 to the Epic Boon, but it's a decent building in its own right, and it's clearly missing subclass features. This, in my opinion, is how the base Ranger should have looked like. Again, Dual Wielder is no good on a Ranger. This is just a placeholder for the lack of a subclass. I can see an argument on taking it on a Hunter Ranger due to level 7 being a defensive feature. But then again, Mage Slayer is likely the better pick, because a failed Wisdom saving throw can incapacitate you, or worse, and if you really want a bonus action attack, you can always take a Monk Dip. But if you're curious, here's what a Dual Wielder Hunter Ranger looks like. It just adds Colossus Slayer and Superior Hunter's Play to the secondary target. That said, I wouldn't, and in fact I won't, optimize a Hunter this way. It's not a subclass meant to specialize in single target damage. Since Emanation are more powerful than Summons, Fey Wanderer isn't either, and Gloomstalker's greater assets won't show on a spreadsheet under Treantmonk's assumptions. The subclass meant to deal single target damage on a melee build is without a doubt the Beastmaster. With a bonus action attack that's more powerful than dual wielding as short sword and that scale right where we need it at level 11, Beastmaster is a direct upgrade to the previously seen dual wielder build. What I want is to figure out how the DPR line would have looked if Treantmonk picked this option. So we're going to make a simple build, taking the same feats we just did, of course, aside from dual wielder itself. We're not going to assume any particular species. Our background is Wayfarer, that gives us the lucky fit. In practice, this will serve as Warcaster before Warcaster, and once we get that, we can use it for initiatives and other saves. At level 4, as mentioned, we take Defensive Duelist. If you're not hit, you don't lose concentration via damage, so in practice, it might have dealt more than Dual Wielder did even on a different build. We cap Dexterity at level 8, then we get Warcaster at 12, and just like in the dual wielder build, we use level 16 to even both wisdom at 18 and constitution at 16. With this out of the way, let's get into the build. Tier 1. Nothing new at level 1 and 2. At level 3, we choose Beast of the Land. Beast of the Sky remains useful for exploration, and Sea for aquatic adventures. The beast attacks when our bonus action is free, so once every other round, because I'm assuming you can't give up the attack with the scimitar to command it. Even then, it's just a straight upgrade from a dual wielder attack, and doesn't come at the expense of our defenses. In fact, the level 4 feat is Defensive Duelist as mentioned, which brings dexterity to 18. The average of tier 1 is 16. This might be the absolute best in the whole game. Tier 2. This is where we start to consider the two scenarios, Hunter's Mark only and the spell you can cast before combat. Hunter's Mark. By sacrificing an attack on the odds round, the beast stays active all of the times, even if the bonus action is taken, resulting in 25.7 DPR. I'm going to consider a running start from level 7 and exceptional training, a feature that activates when you use specifically the bonus action to control the beast and allows it to use the dash, dodge, disengage or help action as its own bonus action. When combat starts and when we switch target, the beast isn't likely melee. When it is, you should be controlling with the bonus action, meaning it can disengage, back off 20 feet and get the running start again. This also improves the ranger's damage a little, because it might send the enemy prone. However, this only works on a large or smaller creature. I've considered this will be the case most of the times, 75%, meaning 3/4 of the time, and if the beast lands a hit, we get advantage. We get 29.6 DPR, then, capping dexterity at 8, we get the last improvement for this tier, going at 13.8. That averages 29, comfortably above the baseline of 25. But when we come pre-cast, Summon Beast plus not having to forfeit an attack to use Primal Companion deal 31 DPR, right at level 5, which the running start at level 7 brings to 34.3. Summon Fae and Conjure Animals raise this to 41. Consider by the time the Fae Spirit comes into play, the beast will already be using the running start. If the enemy is prone, the Fae can attack it with advantage already, and then teleport away staying safer. This brings the other spell scenario at 36 on average. Tier 3. This is where the dual wielder struggled, but we start off with a banger of a feature. Not only the beast has 2 attacks, one as a running start, the other might get the advantage against a prone enemy. For Hunter's Mark, that's the last notable improvement. Warcaster doesn't bring extra damage. There is a small bump for the beast once wisdom becomes 18 at level 16. Still, with an average tier of 40, it's perfectly on the baseline, meaning concentration can only improve things. And that's precisely what happens as we first upcast Fae at level 13, 52 DPR, which might not be what we deal on average, but it's incredibly good damage to deal on round 1 on a combat. Treantmonk's Vengeance Paladin with a greatsword deals this damage on a round by round basis. However, since that build casts Hunter's Mark 2, it can't use Divine Smite on round 1, so its damage is concentrated on round 2 or more, while we deal it right away as soon as combat starts. When you upgrade Conjure Animals to Conjure Woodland Beings at 15, the Primal Companion also has the spell active on it, so it could potentially dash as a bonus, then ready action to move again, basically playing solo rugby. I didn't consider that. Without complicated tricks, our DPR is 60.5. Once our wisdom is 18, I opted to switch for a non-fuming version of the Summon Fae spell. The small DPR improvement isn't worth the utility of the other options, in my opinion, and it still gets advantage a lot. We're dealing 61.2 DPR, and in the grand scheme of things, being able to place a cube of darkness or charm a target, it's easily worth about 1 or 2 DPR. I'm going with +1 wisdom, +1 constitution in this build, for the sake of simplicity, but if your character is small, which it should definitely be so it can ride the beast, mounted combatant is a great alternative. What that enables is if you have your companion dash with you on its back, jump an enemy, then back off, even if the enemy wants to make an opportunity attack, that will have to be on the primal companion, which isn't concentrating, and only if it hits and if you fear it might be fatal, and that you need the companion's damage, you can veer it onto the ranger. Remember, Revivify is a 3rd level spell that leaves you with 1 HP. Reviving the companion costs 1 slot of any level, meaning also first one, and revives it with all its HP. If you precast and keep concentration, our DPR in Tier 3 is now 53 on average. Tier 4. Hunter's Mark improvements alongside the Epic Boon make attack more valuable, though it will always be advantageous to have the beast attack instead of using the short sword more. Precise Hunter brings damage up to 42.2, Irresistible Offense to 50.5, and Foe Slayer to 56.9, in part thanks to the Bestial Fury improvement, for an average of 50 DPR. Our spell have to matter here, as Hunter's Mark is missing the mark is hunting, since the Twig line scores 54 here. Luckily, Conjure Woodland Beings really delivers. Upcasting it deals 64.7 DPR, that 5th level Summon Fae and Irresistible Offense bring to 70.6. This being said, I'm trying to make the build as close as Treantmonk's ones, but I'd like to propose another variation. A level 16, take +2 Wisdom, making it 19, then get Boon of Fate at 19. You still get a decent damage improvement and you get a much better defensive feature. An alternative of course is Combat Prowess. We've seen with the monster manual that resistance to slashing and piercing is not very common, and there is no straight up immunity. Now, to weight up the 2 builds to make the final one. I'm assuming the combination of Lucky and Defensive Duelist protects concentration 4 out of 16 rounds. Warcaster and Defensive Duelist make it 6 out of 16 rounds. And Nature's Veil brings it to 7 out of 16. It's essentially 1 more round per combat compared to the Dual Wielder build, which doesn't get Defensive Duelist. Let's look at the final damage line, now that we have applied how much we can rely on the other spells. As you can see, it never even touches the baseline, and it scores 16, 31, 45, and 57, for a ranking of 256. See this? This is how that DPR line should have looked like. The build Treantmonk landed on, Fey Wanderer, in comparison scores 15, 28, 37, 53 and ranks 227. That's a huge difference. It remains a far cry from Shadow Monk, although the assumption for that build were a lot more permissive. I tried to stick to the assumption Treantmonk made in the last builds, but that's a good thing. All the monk can offer is damage. Once we're not in a fight, the ranger will use his skills, expertises, languages, and ritual casting. Another interesting comparison is with the druid with a ranger dip Treantmonk presented. That build gets access to higher level spells because it has 15 level in druid. However, it struggles way more in tier 2, making this build rank above it. So I will guess ranger is the best multi-class option for rangers. Jokes aside, the point of that build wasn't to deal damage, it was to have an amazing initiative score. I will also point out that it only considered Conjure Woodland Beings to deal damage once per round, not twice like I am. I think. The math is really hard to read in that video. I have a hard time double checking it, so I'm just going to take it at face value. However, in order to get the most out of Wisdom, that build assumes Shillelagh was cast before combat, so it was already on round 1. Maybe your table is okay with that. It is a cantrip, so you could cast it every minute at the cost of your character shouting, "By the power of Grayskull!" or whatever the verbal component for Shillelagh is. Thanks to the guide background and magic initiate druid, the ranger can also get the cantrip. So, how will the Beastmaster Wizger look like? I'm sorry, Wizger? That's awful. I'm going with wiser, although I also consider winger. You're going to have to trust me on the math. I'm not going to break down this build because it's very similar to the previous one. It starts with 17 wisdom, 16 dexterity, 15 constitution, and of course magic initiate druid. Then gets the following feats: warcaster at 4, 20 wisdom at 5, resilient constitution at 12, defensive duelist, or mounted combatant, I really want to pitch that, sorry, at 16, combat prowess at 19. When considering conjure woodland beings, Treantmonk's druid assumes it deals damage once per round. In the previous build I considered it twice, now I'm going with 1.5 times per round, so it's a closer comparison. Consider we use the spell alongside Nature's Veil, a high level feature that a druid can't get, meaning we don't need any action to disengage. If you look at the final comparison, you can see how the druid multiclass gets eventually better than the Beastmaster. A level 10 only, then it's consistently outclassed. The number looks close, but Beastmaster makes for a much better damage dealer overall, especially because it doesn't have to drag through a sluggish tier 2. This also highlights a problem with the Ranger. The weapon damage of this build gets much higher in tier 4 than the version with shortsword and scimitar, in spite of wisdom having almost catched up, and this is because Vex from the shortsword become redundant. Now, that's only on the spreadsheet. When you're going to face an enemy with blind sight, maybe one too large for the beast to knock prone, you're going to be grateful to be able to get a different source of advantage. Furthermore, I don't know what magic item you're going to get. Maybe your DM is going to homebrew a Sunblade with the light property for you or something. So, let's wrap this up. Ranger can dish out solid damage, at least in melee, but Hunter's Mark can only bring you so far. This being said, if you completely shy away from using it, you wouldn't take advantage of some high-level features. I'm certain this isn't the only solution, but it's one I think really plays into the Ranger's strengths. The other half-caster, the Paladin, doesn't get long-lasting spells like these ones, not until summon Celestial or via subclass-specific spells. The Druid can cast this at higher level, but doesn't have expertise, so Survival and Perception are worse for it, and they could help figuring out that a combat is about to break loose. The Bard gets all of this, sure, but doesn't really want to invest in wisdom for those heals when it's based on charisma. If you think about it, this might even be intentional, because it makes the Ranger better at ambushing the enemies. It's kind of a Batman with prep time deal. And the fact Hunter's Mark is essentially free makes for a solid fallback option when concentration is lost. However, Beastmaster is just one subclass. If that was the only option that worked, Ranger would be a failure. That's not the case, and to show that, I'm moving on to the Longbow in the next video, where we will see it with Beastmaster, but also with a different option that might even be better. I'd be really glad to have you there. Ciao belli!